And now our host, Stephen Lee Morris.
So you think creating theater in Southern California is difficult? You should try it in Hong Kong, where William Wong is artistic director of a theater called the Blank Space Theater. It's a studio theater, holds 40 to 50 people, located in an industrial building. It is actually illegal to have a theater in an industrial building. It's rarely licensed, but they do theater anyway. And William joins us from Hong Kong to let us know how he does what he does and why he does what he does. William Wong, welcome to Animal Farm.
Hello, nice to meet you.
You are joining us from Hong Kong. You are the artistic director of a theater there called the Blank Space Studio, which is a descendant of an earlier company called the Circus Theater Group.
Mm-hmm.
And you also make, sort of like so many people doing theater in Los Angeles, in Hong Kong, it's not that different. You have a day job and you are a civil servant for the government in Hong Kong.
Yes.
And you are a law enforcement officer in hygiene. It sounds like environmental health. It's hard to put these pieces together, but life is complicated. So you arrest people for violations of ecological hygiene, or is that?
And also when they're doing illegal hawking, or they do some obstruction in the public space, like putting their things, the shopkeeper put their things on the street, then we will arrest them for like constructing the
because it doesn't
space.
Because it's not hygienic.
Kind of hygienic also, because those things are dirty actually, and the people will have to go onto the road instead of the pavement.
I see. Oh, I see. So it's access issues. Yeah.
Yes, obstructing the public space.
Yeah, I suppose we have a parallel situation in Southern California and in the United States, but I'm sure it operates in a slightly different way. And in the meantime, you have been on the forefront of all kinds of advocacy for free speech, which theater is obviously part of. So tell us a little bit about the Blank Studio Space. From before we recorded, you said it was a theater, it's a studio space, and it holds anywhere from between 40 and 50 people, depending on the seating arrangement. And you also invite international guests to give workshops to train local Hong Kong artists. And you are operating in a somewhat aberrant style, because almost all of the theater in Hong Kong is owned by the government. All the venues are owned by the government. And yet there are no private venues. And so how do you operate, and how do you use theater to say what needs to be said, to tell the truth, rather than propaganda?
Actually, before 2020, when the government passed the national security law, before that, actually the situation was not that complicated or not that difficult, because when the other artists, they booked the venue from the government, like the civic center or the cultural center, the theater house, and actually the venue manager would just, okay, you can do it. Just pay the money, or when we've got the availability, then just go. But now, after the passing of the national security law,
this problem was 2019.
The movement was in 2019. The passing of the legislation was in 2020.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So right around the time COVID showed up.
Yes.
You have this security. Is there a connection between those two?
Actually not, but we just like you try to limit the people going to the public space. Like you can have too many people crowded in the public space. Then we thought there's some slight relationship between that. Actually, the COVID kind of like helped the government try to make the passing of the law like more reasonable.
Okay.
Yes.
So you have a
And-
space, you have a playwright or a director, and they have. I'm doing a theoretical.
Actually, I'm the artistic director. We can't like devise or do our own work, or we will use some script to do our performance, or just devise. I'm trying to. The problem in Hong Kong is instead of those public owned theater, there's some kind of like some private theater like the Art Center Hong Kong, but they're also heavily funded by the government. So after the passing of the legislation, then the theater managers, the venue managers, they would have their censorship in their own mind. So when they receive the application of booking application, when they see what are you going to do in the venue, when they have some very slight worries, then they will reject your application. So it's difficult to, if we're talking about to free speech. Actually,
it's kind of like advertising on Facebook.
Yes, kind of like yes, kind of like that. So it's difficult to like perform or say what you want to say in the theater. So I think actually kind of this private theater is important. It's vital in Hong Kong. But
okay, how restricted are you? Do you have your own venue that is not owned by the government?
Yes, but the problem is it's illegal in Hong Kong to have to perform in some private space, gathering people without license. You have to apply for license case by case. You have when you do the performance, you have to apply for the permit to do the performance in your venue. Then when you do another performance, you have to apply for another permit. But it's difficult to apply for the permit because my studio is located in an industrial building.
Yeah. It's
not built for performing or theater or gathering public people. So they will just reject your application of the permit. So there's no way you can apply for the permit. Even they got the you have the application the application form to fill in, you have the method to apply, but there's no way you can obtain the permit. So actually, when we are doing performance in my venue, it's kind of like risky. Actually, I would worry that when the performance is going on. Actually, I'm kind of like worried the police would knock on the door.
Really?
Yeah, and get in, and we would arrested us, fine the people.
On what grounds? Was it on grounds that they didn't obtain the license, or?
Without license.
Mm-hmm. So you have tried to defy the law a little bit.
Yes, actually, yes.
Yeah. And what is the content of the plays for which the performers and the administrators have been arrested? Is it anything? Is it? Can you track it? Is it because it is questioning the right of the government to be quite so authoritarian and limit free speech, or is that was the content of the work for which you got arrested was that had nothing to do with politics?
Actually, a few years ago, there was a live house in Hong Kong, music live house. They're doing like rock music in the live house. Very frequently, they invite international artists, band group to do the performance at the live house. And you know, of course, when you talk about like rock and roll, they of course have some. I have to rebel. I have to like fight against the authority, and they often like the police would just enter the live house during performance and switch on all those lights. Stand aside. Give me your identity card, and then they will just record and they will arrest the venue manager. It's difficult to the police in Hong Kong. They're clever. They won't say they won't tell you that we arrest you because of your work.
Yeah. Okay.
Instead, they will say talk about because you violate the policy. You can do performance inside in an industrial building. You have to get a permit, so we have to arrest you. But
so they're using the bureaucracy to essentially contribute to a kind of censorship.
Yes. Actually, you can't even hold a workshop in an industrial building, because in Hong Kong you can only use an industrial building for industrial use.
But you've got a venue inside, and so you are you've got a big target on your back as the artistic director, because everything you're doing is going to be questioned. Even if you want to do Cinderella, or you want to do a Chinese fairy tale, they're still going to, it seems to me, they have the right to come in and stop it for whatever reason they want, simply because you're operating inside an industrial building. Is there any remedy that you see for this?
Oh, I can't see any remedies. Like 3 years ago, actually before the movement in 2019, I invite a Taiwanese artist who studied with Suzuki.
Oh yeah.
And he was doing a workshop for us at our space, and some immigration officer just locked the door and broke in and arrested me and the Taiwanese artist in front of the students. And they took us to their headquarters, and they interrogate us for the whole night. But they didn't charge us at that time. They just expelled the Taiwanese artists to Macau, and so the artists have to stay in Macau for 5 days or 7 days before going back to Taiwan because of the flight ticket schedule. But because, as I said, it's illegal to hold a workshop in industrial building. But in Hong Kong, we artists, it's no way we can afford a venue in some commercial building or in other places, because industrial building, the rent is low enough for us to afford. So the dance studio, drama rehearsal space, those kind of things, or even the people will gather and do their Tai Chi exercise, the people, or they doing tango, or other people doing band room, all inside the industrial building. So that's, yes, you can say that that's risky, but I found no remedies, or I can't work for another method to solution to find another venue and move to there, and we can do things legally. Actually,
in Southern California, we have many challenges to putting on a play, and it's become increasingly difficult to put on a play legally. But I think our challenges pale in comparison to what you're experiencing, just when you try to do a workshop for the very real possibility of the authorities knocking on the door and arresting people just for the illegal use of a facility is just extraordinary. It's just extraordinary.
But I'm curious that in South California, how they don't allow you to do the performance because of the content?
No. I don't think that's an issue yet.
Okay.
Yet. No, it has to do with labor laws and being able to afford to pay actors. Okay. And if you can't afford to put on a play, the play doesn't get put on. Okay. And so just like in Hong Kong, there are all kinds of workarounds that people have created, but I do think your challenges are far more profound and direct in Hong Kong. And
yes, and I was busy with the Ukrainian and the Belarus reading project. Yes. At my blank space theater. Yeah. So I kind of find it as you said, parallel to what we are experiencing in Hong Kong. So we kind of work right or watch as you can say there's a kind of like remedy is that we talk about those people, the Belarusian, the Ukrainian, we talk about their situation instead of talking.
So they allowed that. They allowed the Ukrainian Play Festival to go on.
It went on. It went on, but I don't know, because this kind of like unclear for the Belarusian or for the Ukraine situation, because you know the Chinese government's kind of like supporting the Putin and supporting Russian, but they don't do it explicitly. So you got some like space to express what you're feeling when you but you don't talk about the Chinese government.
Right.
And it's okay to kind of like talk about the Ukraine problem, but there's a Ukrainian restaurant in Hong Kong, and because the owner, she is an Ukrainian, and she publicly talk about like supporting the Ukrainian, and those pro-Beijing newspaper, they just wrote many pieces of articles, and they try to attack the people, attack the owner, and say if you like Ukraine that much, then just go back to your own country. We're Hong Kong. We are like we love peace. We don't want any war. The Ukraine have to sit. The Ukrainian have to sit down to discuss with the Russian instead of like fighting against the Russian. Those kind of articles. So it's difficult to define if it is okay to talk about the Ukrainian issue or not. But in Hong Kong, it's like kind of like pathetic to, you can't say something direct about your own situation.
Yeah.
So you have to talk about the Ukrainian, talk about the Belarusian. So the audience, when they like watch your performance, then they will think about their experience in Hong Kong. I think this is the kind of like the only remedy I can think of. You
walk indirectly. You talk indirectly through parallels. Yeah. Very good.
And another problem. Sorry, I have something to share. I think another problem we have to focus on would be the people were heavily traumatized after 2019, after the government kind of crushed our movement.
Yes.
So I'm actually still trying to work for a way in theater or artistically try to help those trauma. Like helping the people getting their, I don't want to say, because when we look at the news, we talk about the 2019, then we'll still have our tears.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. So we as an artist, of course we're trying to, as you said, we talk about express freely or talk about this free speech. But after that, what would an artist do? What can we do in this situation instead of just pointing at the problems and asking you to stand still and try to fight on? Apart from that, what we are going to do with those people who got cognitive trauma in Hong Kong? That's something I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah. Understand. William Wong, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Next week, we welcome back performer, director Michael Shepherd.
If you enjoy Animal Farm, please support us on Patreon.